Well, Danny, I got some news.
What is it?
They try to take me out.
Oh no.
So the past week or so, I was down with the big vid.
The
Sources say
Roni.
that the pot was getting too big, and
Hmm.
the powers that be they were getting a little scared.
Hmm.
We got to be careful what we say. I don't want them scanning the audio and they take us down. But it was a hit piece for sure.
Yeah,
They
there
they
there
try
are
to
some strange men in front of my building. They were trying to knock on my door.
they had sunglasses. Every time I looked at them, they glanced away. It's
There's been
just
this van parked on my street that just says pizza on it, even though it's a white panel van and hasn't moved.
yeah,
So
they're watching us, folks. But we keep going.
we
We're not
refuse
afraid.
to be
We refuse
stopped.
to stop.
The
They
revolution will be podcasted.
absolutely they so to all you bastards out there who tried to get me, keep it coming. That's what
Oh,
I say. Let's yeah, let's I sting like a butterfly and I float like a bee, as the saying goes. So, uh, yeah, maybe you should sleep with one eye open.
oh,
How about that? So,
yeah.
so, Danny, tell him who we are.
Welcome to We Demand a Podcast. I'm Danny.
And I'm Tyler.
I guess we already established that. But we're two longtime friends with two very different tastes in music. We made this podcast to shove our taste down the other one's throat. Once a month, we get together and discuss a favorite album of the other, and try not to ruin our friendship over it. How are you doing, Tyler?
Yeah, I'm doing well. I'm feeling good, feeling healthy. So, I was drinking so much water the past few weeks that I was
Oh,
just living in the bathroom essentially. So
glued
what
to the
I'm doing
toilet.
now is I have just stopped peeing. I've
Mm.
been holding it in for days. My bladder hurts a lot. I may have like a urinary tract infection, but
I
I'm
mean,
still
all the hot
pushing on.
girls this summer have UTIs. So,
Yeah, that's really what I'm into. Some guys are like, I'm an ass man, I'm a boob man. I'm into UTIs. If you got
mm.
one of those, hit me up. So
Come as
yeah,
you
I'm
are.
excited for this. I'm excited for this episode because again, I feel like we have another two albums where I feel like they're sort of connected in this weird
Mm.
way, and that they're both
Interesting.
sort of political. I mean, so we're talking about Lowe's Double Negative and then Curtis Mayfield's Curtis, which the latter is more explicitly political, but
Mhm.
the former is definitely for me political. But yeah, we're gonna start with the Double Negative, which I gave to Danny. So I love this album because it's super unique to me. If you don't know Low that much, they were still are a slowcore band, like the quintessential slowcore band, and that genre, it's known for being very minimalist, sparse, sad lyrics, sad boy music. Uh, and then with this, Double Negative still has some of those elements, but it's an evolution of that sound. I think you could kind of compare it almost to like Radiohead doing Kid A. Like it kind of flipped everything they did on their head, something very new. And that for me is what made this an instant classic. I really love this album. One of my favorite albums to come out in the past few years. It feels claustrophobic, and then at moments it feels very wide and vast. It's this brave, innovative step for low sound, and I think it worked tremendously. So I was really excited to share this one with you, and curious to hear your thoughts.
First of all, the only Low I acknowledge is Low by Flo Rida featuring T-Pain, so this really came as a shock to me. It's interesting you say that you think this album is very unique. It's not that I don't think it's unique, but I could really hear... To me, this is very reminiscent of like a lot of music that was coming out in the early 2010s and late 2000s. And I liked it. I do think this would make a sick remix album. I think that was a lot of my thought was, if you just put some harder drums under these and maybe like chopped them up a little bit and sped them up a little bit, that was like my main takeaway, I think, was that this to me felt like something I would really want to sample a lot.
Yeah, I do think it's ripe for sampling. There's a lot of cool stuff happening. Just little bits here and there where you're like, oh, that's really cool. And going back to me calling it unique, I think it's because I'm looking at it through the perspective of Lowe's work, which if you listen to a lot of their stuff, it's like one snare drum hit and then a guitar chord and then like another snare drum hit. It just, like I said, it's very sparse and minimalist, and this is in a way kind of like the exact opposite. Like it
Would you
still
say it's
has some of
slow?
that stuff. It's yeah. It's also pretty core.
I always think it's interesting because I read that they reject that label, which to me is always the sure sign that it's like the perfect description for your music.
Yeah, absolutely. Like no,
Bands are
that's
always
not
like, "Oh, we're
us.
not
Yeah, it
fucking
is.
this" or whatever. It's like, actually, that's probably because you are in fact that.
Yeah, but I can understand it. Bands, you don't want to say, "Yep, that's exactly what you are," and then you really like nailed yourself to a label. But so that's why I see it as unique. It not to say like it's doing stuff that no one has ever done before.
Right,
I
right,
just
right.
think there's some really unique sounds that maybe I haven't really heard used in this sense.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's a big like headphones album, which
Yeah, 100%. Like I listened to
yeah.
it on my speakers, and I listened to one. I listened to one of the run throughs was on my nice like subwoofer speaker when I was building furniture in my new apartment, and
Mhm.
it sounded good, but I was way less actively listening. And so I think this is kind of a theme with some of the stuff you've given me now. We've done like 4 episodes. The barrier between active and passive listening on this for me lends itself to taking a walk, or I found it sounded really. I really enjoyed listening to it when I was doing work.
Mm.
I wasn't necessarily I wasn't paying too much attention to it per se. Like I wasn't like, and I think because of this, and also because of the way the vocals are so produced and slapped with
Mhm.
effects, whether that be like vocoder stuff or flangers or flanguses or auto tune. I
Yeah.
found myself focusing on the words a lot less. The other thing I would say is that I think I told you specifically, but a lot of what this reminds me of is like artists like the first James Blake record to some extent, but really like XXYYXX and Cloud Rap. So like Clams Casino,
Yeah.
that first
Yeah.
ASAP Rocky take. Some of the stuff Lil
It's
B was doing.
it's funny that you mention James Blake because the producer um BJ Burton, he did stuff with James Blake. I don't know exactly what off the top of my head, but he has worked with him. So, good call there.
Did you listen to the XXYYXX song I sent to you?
The re I did. Yeah, I wanted to listen to more, but I was also like this could
No,
be
it's
a
good.
fun pick for
That's
this
like
week,
the
but
song. Like the rest of it's like that was peak. We first started smoking weed, and it was like this is the craziest shit I've ever heard in my entire life, bro. Like
for the listeners, what was the song?
About You, I believe by XXYYXX. You know, very. It's like it was one of the first songs I can think of that took a lot of the trap drum elements and put it with this real psychedelic vocal sample heavy um
Mm-hmm.
like sound that you didn't really hear in straight instrumental like hip hop. I mean, I don't know if I'd call it hip hop per se. It's probably more electronic, but
Yeah.
like a lot of and a lot of cloud rap is built on like Emojin Heap samples.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for Always Up, for example, I really thought it reminded me of Emojin Heap. And so like, I mean, I love that shit. Like that's very much like, I'm old enough I can look back and be like, the sounds that were sort of percolating when I was coming of age are very similar to
Mm-hmm.
this. I do think it's very different. Cloud rap tends to be more overtly psychedelic, and it tends to be in service of rhythm. And
Mm-hmm.
this felt, if you said their older stuff is basically like, you know, a snare and then a guitar chord, like this is still fairly minimal on the rhythmic elements outside of the vocals, I thought.
Yeah.
But I like I said, I come back to it and like I think that I would love this if like what song I was thinking in particular? Oh, Dancing in Fire. If you like put that to 120 BPM and put like
Mm-hmm.
a four on the floor or like a trap triplet drum kit, I think that shit would go incredibly hard.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be really cool to hear some remixes of this. I definitely agree there. Um, I'm sure there's got to be stuff like that floating around on YouTube. Um, because a lot of my favorite songs, like I really like Dancing in Blood. Um, I like how it kind of continues to like have this build, and then it sort of just like lets you go. There isn't necessarily like a drop. Um, and then Dancing in Fire, I agree with. Like that would definitely go really hard if you just kind of upped the tempo, up the ante a bit here. But I think the fact that it isn't going at that tempo just really lends itself to the feelings here.
Hmm.
Like a big reoccurring theme with my selections is music as feeling, which I'm really big on. Um, and this album is centered around feeling, feelings of like paralysis, anxiety, confusion. For me, it's an anxious record. It came out in 2018, so it's deep into like the Trump years. It's not so much like looking back on music in like 2016, 2017, and even late 2015. It was that like reactionary, politically charged stuff, like heat of the moment sort of music. Whereas this is like we're in this shit now, and we've had time to settle here, and we can like really like take it all in. There's a line from Disarray, the closer, that's before it falls into total disarray. You'll have to learn to live a different way, which I think hits pretty hard now. um, but it was still hitting hard in 2018 because it was like that sort of surrealism of the moment wore off, and it's like you're here now. This isn't this bad dream. You're living it. Um, so that's a lot of the feelings that I
Yeah.
get from this record. It's not a very hopeful record. I think there's flickers of hope, but overall it's pretty despondent. It kind of like if I had to create an image of this album, I imagine like cutting someone and like static, like TV static is like leaking out. Like there's no blood. They're like this otherworldly thing. Um there's a touch of corruption here with that production. Everything sounds like, oh, my speakers are busted or something. Um and that to me is just very reflective of the times.
Yeah, I found myself sometimes being like, did my headphones turn off? Because my headphones are fucked. And it was just like very kind of like low ambient noise. I think I was gonna say I think that the use of like noise and like industrial sounds is very interesting. Um
Hmm.
like I thought on Quorum there's a part where you kind of get like the crackly noise and I was like this is almost doing hi-hat rolls like
Yeah.
rhythmically and like it's like there are times when because they're pretty minimal on the drums like I think the most drums you get are kind of like super reverb heavy washed out like kicks that have the low end really cut out and
Yeah.
like maybe some 808s so the noise really has to do a lot of the heavy lifting there
I
um
like the drums in Dancing in Blood. It's like bum 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 bum. Just
yeah
it's like, is this a kick? Is this a tom? It's just so buried, and yeah.
I also my note on Dancing in Blood for the second half is it's giving Mongolian throat music.
Yeah, I can kind of see that comparison.
It's interesting that you said it's a anxious and to you a political, and I don't disagree that politics isn't just I mean, as we've seen, it can't just be limited to like voting or fucking whatever,
Yeah,
or like tweeting the pig with shit on its balls at like
right.
uh Glenn Beck or whatever. But um I thought of this as, I think you said claustrophobic was a good word.
Hmm.
And it does, like you said, alternate between being very vast and very compressed. Um,
Hmm.
I do think the first half of the record. Well, actually, that's not true. I think it has ups and downs, and it definitely, I think it ends like from Dancing in Fire to Poor Sucker to Rome to Disarray is probably the least
Hmm.
ambient stretch of the record.
Yeah.
Like I think that's where like a lot of like I think Rome is I don't know if poppy's the right word, but it felt like the most
It's
pop
more
sensible.
accessible.
Yeah, that's a better word. But I think it just had like sensibilities that were more focused on pop. And
Yeah.
like another, like for Rome in particular, but also in addition to Imogen Heap, another person reminded me of, and James Blake does this a lot too, but that the Bonnie Vare like layers of autotune vocals.
Y Again, BJ Burton worked with Bonnie Iver, so
Yeah,
he
yeah,
produced his records.
okay, that makes total sense. I don't know if I call it. It didn't feel anxious to me per se. It felt very despondent.
Yeah.
I think I wrote emo as hell somewhere on here.
Yeah, it's funny. I also wrote there are flickers of hope, but it's overall despondent, and I think I said that earlier too. Um, Kind of what it reminds me of. I wrote there are voices lost among the noise. It reminds me of like you're on the river Styx and there's those lost souls in the water like crying out. Sometimes it's like the image this album gives me. Like you're kind of trapped in like this room and just that feeling of like again like I don't really want to say hopelessness. I know like despondent is kind of the same thing, but I feel like they have their own feelings. Maybe despair is the best way. I know that's like the antonym for hope, but it's just like what can I do? It's that feeling of like powerlessness, but you're still like shouting out, and even with all that noise, the voices are still there. Like they puncture through. They're not totally like the worst it gets is with Tempest, where it's just you can barely understand what anyone is saying. Um, but there's still something human and voices through all of that distortion and noise. Um, and I still had that connection to when I first listened to this and it being 2018 and just like everything going on like outside of my personal life. I was working a job that like I absolutely hated, stressed me out so much, made me anxious, and listening to this, I projected some of those feelings onto it as well. Um, so that's where a lot of those feelings come from for me.
It's interesting you brought up a Tempest because I believe when the big industrial sounds come at the very beginning, I think I it reminded me of like the visual was like an ogre stomping around in like a JRPG.
Yeah, I can
I
kind of see
also
that.
wrote that this reminded me of like the type of stuff you'd hear in the background of a show like Westworld, which
Mm-hmm.
is in itself a show that very much alternates between flickers of hope, but mostly like has a pretty
Yeah.
negative viewpoint on humanity. Even though the third, I can't believe they made I can't believe they made a fucking fourth season. That third season was fucking ass.
I never really got through the first. Like I wanted to like it more than I did. I think it was like overhyped for me, and I
Mm.
kind of like I could kind of see where everything was going. But what you're saying, like, it's kind of making me think. This also kind of reminds me of The Leftovers. You ever watch that?
I have not, but I've obviously heard very good things.
Yeah, like that's a show that just feels so like despondent and hopeless. In a very like interesting way. Um, and it's it's funny because like the first Low album, it's titled "I Could Live in Hope." They always kind of had I feel like these little flickers of hope and tinges of it, but um, for me, I don't really get a lot of that from this, even though I love listening to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think something you talk about the voices and like the river Styx and like this idea of sort of like shouting into the void, but I don't know if I'd use the term shouting or screaming or whatever because the vocals are so pretty. In particular, the female singer. Like, I think my favorite song is "Fly," uh,
Yeah.
and it's
Well, the
just like,
harmonies that they do is like
yeah,
great.
it's just so, and I think it's probably the point. It verges on being inhuman at times. Like, yeah, with all the layers of vocal effects, it can really start to
Yeah.
feel like something that's like transcended human instincts, but
Like that next step of like human evolution. It's like this is what
transhumanism.
humans became. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I also think something I just want to bring up. A critic I really like brought up is like to give you a sense of. I think this might have been 2017, but I think it was 2017, 2018. One of the top 100 songs of 2012 was called "Happy," and one of the top songs of 2018 was called "Sad." Uh,
Wow.
yeah, like it doesn't. But yeah.
Joker voice. This says a lot about society.
Oh Jesus. Speaking of Jesus, there was at least one song where I was like, is this like a God song? I think the sun. Uh,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was a little, but I was really surprised. Like, I don't know why I was surprised. I'm trying really hard to not be offensive, but I was really surprised to learn that they are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter Day Saints.
Yeah, we've been outspoken on bald folks, and we made some comments about the British. So I again, that's why I think they were coming after me with COVID. So I don't know.
I mean,
Just saying.
the Mormons do control the intelligence services essentially at this point.
They also control the slowcore genre. They don't want you to know that, but they get their
They
hands
control
deep.
making some of the most ass pop music of all the time between the Osmond family and fucking Imagine Dragons.
Yeah, like they're the problem here.
Well, I wouldn't go that far, but like I guess the Killers
you
are
know,
okay. I never got the Killers. Like I
the
don't
Killers had that
understand. I don't
good
understand Mr.
first album.
Brightside. That song is like just fine. You know,
Yeah, I don't
it's
know.
I don't get it. Anyway, but that's why
I
that's
yeah, I don't really know enough about Low and their connection to faith. I haven't heard them say much. I know folks who are more into the band than I am. Like they were listening to them when these albums were new, so I might have to do some research. But it would be kind of interesting. Like how much does that play into the music they make and things like that? Because obviously, like regardless of your religion, like if you are a religious person, I think those ideas find a way into your music regardless.
like I think there's a theme in this record that stuck out to me about like escape. Whether that be like fly,
Yeah.
it's literally like I'll fly away, or dancing in fire. That's sort of about like there's an idea of like escape through destruction. I think in that song, and that's
Mm-hmm.
always I think that always reflects a very like there's a very Christian ideal of the escape from the shackles of the body, is like.
Yeah.
And I think to bring it back to us talking about sort of like the record having a very transhumanist feel, like that tracks as well with this idea of trying to transcend the sort of the trappings of the flesh. I guess.
Yeah. I would really, it's making me want to go back and re-listen specifically with that lens in mind because I always kind of had those ideas, but talking about that in greater detail with you, it would be fun to go back and having that topic at the forefront of my mind. Because I agree, there is a lot of that here, and a really good companion piece to this. They came out with an album. I'm pretty sure it was last year, just called "Hey What" in all caps, which is pretty similar sound with like that sort of industrial sort of thing, but I think there's more elements of their traditional work there. They feel more like songs as opposed to more of these experimental pieces. Um,
I will
so if you enjoyed
say,
Double Negative, I would definitely check that out.
yeah, I will say, like, I listened to it with my roommate, and they said I brought the XXYY XX comparison, and they listened to stuff that's more like bangers, and they said
Mm.
they didn't dislike it, but like they definitely preferred stuff that was more of a banger. But I don't think you can deny that these are there's a lot of songwriting flourishes. I think like Poor Sucker, like the way they enunciate some of those vocal lines is really reminding me of like rappers, like the money in the
Yeah,
bank. Like
yeah,
they certainly aren't disinterested in writing songs in a like in a traditional like rock sense, if that makes sense.
yeah. I mean, since you kind of brought up the lyrics, I know you were saying one of the earlier listens you had, it was pretty passive, and you didn't uh, focus on much on the lyricism. Um, I think the last listen I had, I focused like explicitly on that stuff because there are a lot of lines on this album that I really like. I mean, I referenced the one from Dancing in Blood, but there are two from Dancing in Fire that I really like. The first one is it's more of a let it out than let it go. In like the sense of like what I was saying earlier, like the sense of like screaming out that frustration as opposed to like let out that heavy breath of sigh and just, like let all of that go. It's coming more from like a place of like rage and frustration. And then another from the same song is you don't know what you're fighting for. It's not the first time you delayed the boat. Like this idea of there's so much happening that you're losing track of it all. Um, and then I like the lyricism on Poor Sucker a lot. There are a lot of lines on there. Um, so there are definitely some lines here that were standouts for me.
Yeah, I think it's still even like I listened to it maybe an hour before we got on started the recording process, and I still struggle to pick out a lot of lyrics. Like that's not what's memorable to
Yeah,
me about this record. Um,
yeah, I agree. I mean, the
it's not
lyrics
it's
are
not to
like,
say they're bad or anything, but I think that when you're
yeah, there's a
using
lot of
the
other cooler stuff going on.
I think when you're using vocals as an instrument more so than
Mm-hmm.
as like the poet, like there's a video I watched once about like a very intense like music theory professor doing an analysis of Trout Mouse Replica by Captain Beefheart,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and he spends like 5 minutes on the lyrics, and then it's just like an hour and a half on all of the interesting like stuff where
yeah,
like, and especially with that thing with the lyrics, where the whole that shit is just like not to get too derailed, where it's so fucking like a fucking mess essentially
mm-hmm.
that the lyrics just fit this other like weird rhythmic melodic element. When
Yeah,
in this, where like I said, like the main melody, the main rhythm comes from the vocals, I can find it harder to. It would take a lot of listens. Like I would have to be very familiar with those particular elements of it to really sink my teeth into the lyrics of it all.
mm, yeah. Um, you had mentioned track, like the track listing and that stretch where it was less ambient. Um, I want to know your thoughts on like the pacing of the album because I personally think it's really well paced. Like the ambient bits come right when they need to. Um, I think it's Dancing in Blood where again they just kind of like drop you and it's the sense of like you're just kind of floating in space. Um, you're not really falling. uh the whole album feels like a journey. Like a lot of songs are segueing into each other in a sense of like just again put those headphones on, lay down, and just really lose yourself in the album. So I want to know like what you thought about the pacing of everything.
I personally thought um, a lot of the songs in the first half I thought were like just like a little too long, like maybe like
Mm-hmm.
15 to 30 seconds too long. I think Dancing in Blood is one that stands out to me where I was like, all right, we need to fucking move this along. Um, I think yeah, this when the sun comes in, I was like, all right, I don't want to go back to this level of ambience. Like I'm
Got it.
Like
Yeah.
it felt like the first half was more ambient in general, especially because like I said, those last
Hmm.
4 songs are probably the most like traditional rock pop like sensible songs.
Yeah.
I do I really appreciated the way the songs bled into each other very seamlessly. like when I
Yeah. That's
was
so so cool.
when I was trying to pick out my favorite songs, I kind of found it hard because this really felt like an album experience to me.
Yeah. That's
Uh,
yeah. I would definitely agree.
and I think I might have brought this up before, but I had a friend in high school who had a very hot take that was if any song on an album works better on its own than within the album, it makes the album worse. I don't really agree, but I do think that all of these songs would probably not sound as good standalone. Like it really is a body of work, and so even though
Yeah.
I might be
It's
like,
funny.
I want to skip this, like, oh, I need like 15 less seconds.
Yeah.
I wouldn't
Like
want to do.
you need to go through quorum. Like you need to get through that like opening where it's like and just kind of go through this journey. In fact, I remember the first time I heard Disarray, I didn't like it. And then once I heard it in the run of this album, I was like, okay, now it's clicking for me. Because I'm a big believer in that too, in that sometimes you need to understand the context of that track in the listing, which will there's some thoughts I have on that with our next discussion. But I agree with that. Like it's an album experience. It's not like, oh, I want to listen to that track. And if I'm like cooking dinner or, I just have like my Spotify going and a song from this pops up, I have to like queue up the next one and just keep adding them in
Hmm.
because it's like it sucked me back in. I'm like, oh man, because that one comes after, and now I'm back in
Yeah,
that journey
there's
again.
absolutely albums like that for me. I really feel
Yeah.
that. But yeah, I mean, I definitely
Where
like I definitely liked it, and I definitely am happy to listen to it, even if it was a bit of a dirge sometimes. Where I'm like, it's so sunny and hot, you know.
Yeah.
But
Were there's I mean, you were talking about like the ambient pieces and how they didn't hit for you as much. Would you say like that
they're just too
that's just
long.
an issue with like ambient itself or
No, not necessarily. I just sometimes thought like I think Dancing in Blood's like 6 minutes. Like didn't need to be 6 minutes. Could have been like four,
yeah.
like 4:45. It was more of just like I was like, all right, it's going like it. Like what I was trying to say earlier was, it's not that I don't think that that's a crucial part of the sound and why it works so well as a
Mhm.
cohesive album. I do think it's like you need someone to come and be like, all right, like let's chop chop like a little bit more at times, but
Yeah.
not across the board. It was more of like particular songs. I think like I said, Dancing in Blood stands out. I think the end of always trying to work it out because I think it's very repetitive on that back end. You know,
Yeah.
could have been like 30 seconds shorter. I mean that's why I appreciate the second half of the record. Like it's there's a real
Trim
slick
the fat a little bit.
there's a real slick because Always Up is the fifth track and Always Trying to Work It Out is the sixth, and repeating the same first word and kind of like a chiasmus
Yeah.
deal is always it reflects the intentionality of the record as a whole. But everything after Always Trying to Work It Out, I think, is like noticeably shorter. Like the songs, I think,
Mhm.
are closer to 4 minutes than six, and so I think I prefer that part of the record. I think that's a big reason why. I also have crippling ADHD, so like it's not an indictment on Low as much as it's an indictment on me and my
Yeah.
constant need for content.
See, it's funny cuz I I really do enjoy losing myself to instrumental ambient pieces. Um, a friend of mine, I'm sure I said this before on the podcast, but he's talked about this kind of music as music under a microscope, and it's like these mini examinations of things, and that's why I've really gotten attached to ambient music. I can very much listen to it actively. There's always new things that I pick up on, and the same can be said for this album. So those pieces where it's just like these ambient pads going on for an extra 2 minutes. Me personally, like I love that shit. I'll slurp that up all day long.
I mean,
Um,
I think it's just a difference. Like that's one of the differences in our taste. Like I appreciate
yeah,
ambient music.
this is where the first fight happens, folks. You better crank up the volume.
No, I mean the first fight was going to be when I was like, uh, in Rainbows is like the track listing is not good. I think that would have been the fight if we were to have one.
What did you just say? But yeah, I know you said it's tricky to pick like your favorite track. What were like your standout favorites?
Fly, Poor Sucker, and Dancing in Fire, but particularly those first two. Uh,
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely Fly. Like Fly's the one I saved outside of this record. The first time I heard it, I was like, okay, because like Quorum was very ambient. I was like, is it going to be like this? Then Dancing in Blood, you kind of get that burst of stuff, and it goes back, and I'm like, ah, shit, like, is this what it's going to be? And then Fly comes in, I was like, all right, here we go. Like, this is like, I think there's like a lot of, to your point about music as examination, like there's a lot of like the call and response between the guitar line and the bass is very interesting, while the vocals are kind of really dominating the soundscape. Like there's these very subtle kind of like things going on in the background, and that stuff I always really appreciate. Like, as someone who's like tried to make music with varying degrees of success, the subtle craftsmanship is what I think really sticks out to me on stuff like this.
Yeah, I think it's very well crafted and just a very nicely produced record. Would do you think you're gonna check out the album they made after this? It does kind of continue that journey.
I'd be more curious to hear the stuff they did before this, to be honest, because when I was reading
Yeah,
their
I
all
definitely
music,
would recommend it.
when I was reading their all music, they really made it sound like this was a huge departure, and so I'm really curious,
Yeah,
to like what it was before, but certainly on the radar. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, cool. Well, looking forward to talking later on about their early stuff. But yeah, glad to hear you dug it.
yeah, absolutely.
And I don't mind. Leave my weary bones and
Yeah, I just want your live reaction to this, okay?
Okay.
She Bear on my big blue house. She Clifford on my big red dog.
Oh no.
She Berenstein on my bear. She Lingen on my berries. See, she BJ on my nove till I ack.
Oh no. I'm hurting. My body is in big physical pain.
Why? I mean, wasn't that good?
I had one earlier in the week that I threw out there on the Twitterverse.
Oh yeah.
She Oliver Twist on my Charles Dickens, Chuzzlewit her Martin, Scrooge and got her walking like Tiny Tim.
Fuck.
So reoccurring listeners may know a thing or two about our coverage of what I like to call hashtag Mustaine Madness. And we got some news for you. So
can you put the air horns there? That'd be really helpful.
But so here we go. So
You are listening to the Mustaine Madness.
Mustaine Madness.
Yeah, there you go.
But I'm gonna just read this from an article. Megadeth frontman Dave Mustaine reportedly became irritated when Judas Priest road crew began sound checking while his band was performing at Spain's Barcelona Rockfest this past Saturday, July 2nd. Um, so they were on stage, just doing their thing. Um, After Megadeth played the sixth song of its set, Trust, a visibly annoyed Mustaine stopped the show in protest of the crew on the other main stage, which was getting ready for Priest's performance later in the night. This is what Dave said in the microphone. We'll wait till he's done checking his guitar over there. After a long pause, during which he apparently flipped the bird at the crew member in question, Mustaine continued, the last night of the tour, went all the way to the last fucking night, and then some pussy over on the stage next to us has to start playing while we're playing. How fucking pathetic, amateur piece of shit you are. So he was just going off. So I'm glad to hear
I'm
our
glad to
buddy
hear that he's
Dave
just as
is.
unstable off the alcohol as he was on the alcohol.
I want to know, did Dave make it back to the States for July 4th?
I mean, he is like an Infowars guy. I'm sure he wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
Yeah, I couldn't find any news on that. Um, we'll keep
They don't
digging.
want us to
Maybe
know.
next,
This is why they're after
yeah,
us.
next month we might have some news. But I'm looking outside my window. I heard a bird outside my window, and I think that's government agents. I think they're doing something. So we're gonna keep digging and finding out more info. But believe me, we're
Don't
doing.
erase gang stalking.
Yeah.
On that note,
So
speaking of stalking, I actually don't know how to
uh-oh.
transition. Anyway,
Speaking of stalking, that's something that Curtis Mayfield never did.
as far as we know. Yeah, so the album I picked is Curtis by Curtis Mayfield. It's his debut solo record. It's released 1970. And What's Going On comes out like 6 to 8 months later. And I think that Curtis Mayfield's legacy as a solo artist is really defined by the soundtrack he did for Superfly. And I think that's what most people would know him for, at least our age. I think this album is better than the Superfly soundtrack. It was very ironically, it was kind of critically panned, not panned, but the critics didn't really like it when it came out. And I think that as time has gone on, it's become more beloved. It's often sampled, constantly. I think probably the most famous sample is Kanye West "Touch the Sky," is a sample of "Move On Up."
Jesus Walks as well.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
I can't say it, but it's that part in Jesus Walks.
Yes, it is. Yes.
So
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, but anyway, Tyler, what'd you think?
I liked it. It was solid. Biggest thing that stuck out to me was the percussion. I really loved the percussion throughout it. It having a lot of polyrhythm stuff going on, which I'm a big sucker for. You know, a lot of stuff that I was kind of reading about when I was doing my research, because a big thought I had was I thought it was pretty simple lyrically. But I kind of think that's the whole point.
I do want to say that was one of the big criticisms of the record when it came out. Like that was something the critics did not love, I think.
That was my big talking point. Just looking at the lyrics as they're written, not the content. It's very simple rhyme schemes, like A B B sort of thing, or like A B A B, like pretty simple. Um, but again, I kind of think that's the whole point, and not every album has to have these super complex lyrics like To Pimp a Butterfly or something. Like it's okay to be a bit more simple. It's fine to have here's what's going on, something that's a lot more depth to its lyrics, and then on the other hand have Curtis. I think it really utilizes cultural relativism, um and that whole idea that a person's beliefs you understand them based on like your own culture. Like you have to
Yeah.
relate it to those people, and just obviously
Yeah.
like if you're making a record in the 70s, like the breakthrough is like, can we get white audiences to listen to this and buy this? And if your record is going to be charged with politics and race, you need to explain these things in big dumb baby way for the white people to understand. So that's why I think like it's effective because it's simple.
I think it's interesting you talk about speaking to white audiences because I we broke protocol and I had you listen to People Get Ready by the Impressions. Um,
Mm-hmm.
which is so that was Curtis's group, his vocal group before he made this record. And that song is considered like an anthem of the civil rights movement. It was a song that marchers would frequently sing when they were marching. In sort
Yeah.
of like that song came out in '65, I think, or maybe '64. So it's sort of like a lot of the peak of the violent like backlash against civil rights protesters. At least from like on TV and stuff. Not to say people were still getting firebombed well before then, but Curtis comes. He has his reputation when this record comes out as being like one of the voices of the civil rights movement, at least like especially like
Mm-hmm.
lyrically. And I think that a lot, well, at least what a lot of the critics said was it speaks a lot of platitudes, and it's very simple, perhaps maybe reductive. And I think that there's a sense in which this album and his later '70s music is often cited as sort of like foundational to like Black Power or like Black Pride.
Yeah.
And I mean that's like one of the like the themes in this record with the like there's like it's interesting. I think you can almost break it off in like there's sort of things in pairs, like like Move On Up, Miss Black America, are very much like in this Black Pride. Wild and Free, I think to some extent as well. And then you have the cultural relativism stuff like Other Side of Town, We the People Were Darker Than Blue, and
Mm-hmm.
to although I think Don't Worry If There's a Hell Below is less about cultural relativism, more about kind of like it's interesting because a lot of the music is very happy on this record. I think with the
Yeah.
exception of We Feel We're Darker Than Blue, it's a lot of major songs in major keys and like very bright sounds, a lot of ornate instrumentation, but there's a lot of like please. It's very much like begging people to kind of like get their shit together, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's helpful that it's simple, because like if you're trying to, it's great like this analogy, like if someone is choking in their restaurant, you're gonna be like, yo, like help him. You're not gonna think of these super complicated ways to get your point across. Though that being said, I would agree that like it being simple lyrically can be a valid criticism. It kind of depends on what you're looking for from the album. It just didn't really bother me that much. I think maybe on the first listen, I was kind of like hoping for a little bit more, but also to be fair, I was driving back from like this 3 hour car trip, and I think I just kind of wanted to get home. So maybe I was like a little bit harsher on like what I was listening to, and that's why I always go back and give it a few more listens. But
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, I don't think it has to be like insanely complex.
I think that for the simplicity, I think he does have some very memorable lyrics. I think that,
Yeah.
interestingly, I think the best lyrics are on the songs about relationships. Um,
Hmm.
like I think there's like a part in The Makings of You, like the love of all mankind should reflect some sign of these words I've tried to recite. They're close but not quite. I think that's just like a very beautiful sentiment. I think that.
Yeah.
And my favorite song on the record, which is the closer, "Give It Up." I think even though it's very plain, I think it's just it's a very complicated song emotionally. I think particularly the way the
Yeah.
music acts on it because it's so triumphant and
Uh-huh.
big, but it's a very like. It's about giving up, right? Like why?
Yeah. I really wanted to talk about this one. Because like throughout this album, I see Curtis as like this preacher figure, like more on like the street corner preacher, like, and I think the opener really has that vibe because like the voice feels very large, and I can kind of picture this guy like on the soapbox, like everyone, like look, like we need to do something about everything going on. Um, like so much of what he's saying is coming from a place of love and turning hate into love as
Absolutely.
opposed to like just pure like anger. Um, and I definitely connected with that, but what I really thought was interesting is that Give It Up is definitely the most pessimistic and hopeless track. I don't have the lyrics in front of me, but there was essentially something that the line is basically along the lines of like, I feel like I can say all this stuff to you and like it's still useless. And as we were talking about during our discussion with Double Negative, I believe track placement is an important factor in understanding an album, and that's the kind of thing that's talked about. Like, how do we want to lay out these tracks? And I could be totally wrong with in terms of this particular album, but the fact that it ends on that, like, this whole idea of like, I just spent all these songs talking about how we need to unite and band together and really believe in love, and then the last track is just kind of like, I give up. I'm still kind of wrestling with it, and I was really curious to like kind of hear your thoughts on that.
You know, I don't know if I ever have truly thought about it in that sense because to me, like, I think of like the stuff that's really, like you said, and I think this is also part of the criticism because, like, like this comes out like, 1968, 69 are some of the most, politically unstable times in America in like,
Mm-hmm.
perhaps ever. They're up there with, the post Civil War era. I mean, our current era, I would say, is kind of up there. And so for him
Yeah.
to come out with these very much like everyone like we need to love each other to like overcome this when the Panthers are becoming the thing and like there's a lot more anger I think
Yeah.
in the wake of the assassination of MLK and Malcolm X and RFK. I think that I don't want to say it was a tonal like he didn't read the room, but I think that was part of the reason why the simplistic lyrics also didn't sit right with critics at the time, like contemporary critics.
Yeah.
I think that all those songs are about us, and this is about him, right? I think
Mm-hmm.
there's a sense in which, like, like all his messages, like, we need to come together, and this is like sometimes, like, so sometimes what's best for other people may not be these interpersonal feelings, like relationships fail and that's okay. Like we're not
Yeah.
perfect and sometimes it's not going to work out, but that doesn't mean that like the movement isn't going to work out. But I like you said I do think it's very interesting that this is the closer. After he is very
Mm-hmm.
much like I think preaching is a good word. Like I mean if it the opening track, if there's hell below it's very much a classic Jeremiah. It's like if we don't stop
Mm-hmm.
fucking up, we're all just going to go to hell, right? And then it
Mm-hmm.
ends with you know like I'm really sorry, but this isn't working out. It is interesting. I like some of the lyrics on this like but as I read it must be so the invulnerable word incompatible. No matter how hard we try, our indifference but still shows. Like I think that might be what you're talking
Yeah.
about.
That was the line.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I love to hear your thoughts more on this too, but it really it really undercuts it. It makes the record end in a very pessimistic note after, like he really builds up the tracks, the three tracks on like side A is with the exception of Makings of You is pretty depressing. Like
Mm-hmm.
Don't Worry's Hell Below, Other Side of Town, which is like the angriest song I think. Like there's a line on the Other Side of Town where he's like don't come around here and act like you know what the fuck you're talking about if you're not from here. You know,
Yeah.
and then we people
Well,
are
I like
darker.
what you.
No,
Yeah,
go ahead.
keep going.
I was saying, and then
Well,
we the people that are darker than blue is like very. I don't despondent, but it's kind of like we really have to do some shit. Like this is not
mhm.
tenable. And in the second half, it's Move On Up. That's like the happiest song on the record. Miss Black America is very, you know, happy.
Celebratory in a
Yeah,
way.
Wild and Free is I'd also say is to an extent celebratory, and then it's this.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I like what you said earlier in that all those other songs are about us, and this one is about him. And I kind of view it as, as you were talking and thinking more, it can kind of be him saying like, I can't be the one to do all this work. Um,
Mm.
you know, a lot of things that people say, at least that I've heard, within the past few years with like everything that has happened with the Black Lives Matter movement and everything, is that like it isn't the responsibility of black people to educate white people. Like, you need to, like, don't go asking your black friends, well, what can I do to help? Like, you can find the resources and learn and do that stuff too. Usually, like, the most important bit is just shutting up and listening to other people. um and I kind of view this, like you said, it's him talking directly to us. Like, this is Curtis talking, whereas all those other songs were the street preacher talking. And it's him saying like, look, this is all on you all now. Like, you as a society and a people have to do this because I'm not the only one that can convince you. Like, you have to pull your weight and do it. It's definitely a question and a subject that like we're not gonna solve by the end of this episode. Um, but definitely one that every other time I'll revisit this, I'm gonna continue to think about. Um, because it is really interesting, and there might not be an answer. I think that's also kind of a lot of the point to the music in that like the things are complex. You were saying something earlier about how like there's just a lot of shit to figure out, and it's complicated, and it can get messy. It's not super straightforward, and that's kind of where that simple lyricism can kind of come in and to try and make it that. But
Yeah, if we're going to think
you
about
kind of
this
have those
as
feelings.
yeah, sorry to cut you off. If we're going to think of this as like political messaging, like they always just say it the most
Mm-hmm.
simple way possible. Like the most effective stuff is like stuff that is emotionally resonant and simple. And
Yeah.
I do think that like yeah, give it up very much does feel like him. Like this is like about me. And I do think it's interesting that Superfly, the next record, is obviously a soundtrack, but it's much more pessimistic as a whole, I think, about uh
Mm-hmm.
the urban poverty, drugs, like that sort of stuff that is alluded to on this record, I think quite a bit, but
Yeah.
push, stuff like Freddy's Dead and Push Man is very much like the sort of the inverse of this, where he's not preaching to you, he's telling a story to maybe try and get your shit together. And I do think
Mm-hmm.
that's why I think particularly with how centric on like drug dealing it is and how sort of prescient that is for what hip hop's going to become in sort of the next decades. I think that's why that one might have more
Yeah.
cultural cachet. But something we haven't talked about is the fucking music on this record.
I
Like
know. Talked a lot about the lyrics. I mean,
it
it's
fucking whips.
funny.
I'm sorry, it whips ass. Like
Yeah.
I fucking love horns. Like brass is my favorite
Oh,
instrument,
absolutely.
and just man, like, whew, I mean that's why
There
"Give It
is
Up" is so good. Like those horn hits on the
there is a
chorus.
law. There is a law to music that when you add in horns, it makes your song better. Like, horns and sax, when you put that shit in there, it it makes me go, oh, okay, okay, I
I
hear
mean,
ya.
like how many pieces is the band on this record? Like, is it like a 20 fucking piece band or something? Like it's
Let's
got to be like it's just
Yeah, musicians. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I mean, we're already over 10. Like,
yeah, like
a
it's
lot of
a
people. Like, don't worry if there's a hell below. We're all going to go. Kind of reminds me of Wars of Armageddon by Funkadelic off Maggot Brain.
yes, yeah, yeah.
Um, and I love Maggot Brain. I love that album. I love Wars of Armageddon. Like, it's so like chaotic. Like I said before, I just really love polyrhythms when like someone's on like the bongos and then like a guitar is doing like a different rhythm and all of that's coming together and it's just like there is so much happening. I really think as we're talking through this, I can really kind of used to imagine like music videos in your head when you were like listening to music as a kid. I like still do that, but I can kind of frame this album as like a concept album of this street preacher character. And like the beginning is like the city and all the cars are going and everyone's walking and there's all these sounds and it has its own rhythm. Um, Move on up, same thing. There's a reason that track is like as famous as it is, and I mean everything slaps. Like this is a, and we can talk about. It's like we spent all this time talking about like how the lyrics are simple, where it's like the music is just so kick ass
Yeah,
that we
well,
really need to like give it that love.
like it would be overwhelming if the poetry was really complicated on songs like
Yeah,
Get Move On Up
and
or
you could, yeah, you could argue that it almost would almost kind of take away from like the the music, like because you brought up what's going on. I feel like the music here is like there's kind of more happening. Not to say like there isn't a lot happening on what's going on, but the focus of what's going on is the lyrics.
yeah,
Um,
and
and the
I
focus here is the music.
if we're going to compare these two records, which we are the definitive people to do so.
Yeah, fuck you, everyone else. We're the experts.
What's going on? Another one of my favorite records. It has a very coherent sound. Like the reason it's so
Mhm.
the reason What's Going On is so fucking good is the way all the songs blend together and have this very cohesive sound that develops
Yep.
throughout the record. This feels more like songs. Like this is a song, this is a song, and because of that, like you get these songs like We the People Who Are Darker Than Blue that just sound nothing fucking like Move On Up. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and I think that gives it. I don't want to say it makes the emotional depth of it like very different. Like when it's song to song, it's so different, right? Like,
Yeah.
don't between from like Other Side of Town is probably like one of my like not this is not a dime, but it might be like one of my least favorite. It is one of my less favorite instrumental like product like compositions on this record. But like you compare like
Yeah.
if there's a Hell Below and The Makings of You, We People Are Darker Than Blue, and Move On Up, like those are three very different songs, right?
Yeah.
And I mean,
Yeah, I agree.
I obviously don't think anyone's underrating him, but like I feel like Curtis Mayfield should be in those conversations with like Quincy Jones as like one of these like great conductors,
Yeah.
composers, because it's phenomenal, man.
Yeah, and something I like a thought that I had listening to it. I do think there were some songs that I kind of was drifting in and out, like particularly um like Darker Than Blue and stuff like that, where kind of like your thoughts with Low, where I felt like this could have been shortened a little bit. They do mix things up, which kind of like reels me back in. Um, but I think there were just some songs where I was like, okay, like we're at like 6 minutes here. Um, which is funny because I think we're like exact opposites when it comes to length and music and like what what we want when a song is long. But when I listed out my standout tracks, I actually put Miss Black America as one of them because,
Mm.
and a lot of people seem to think that's like a weak track, but I think the reason I really like it is because it's short and sweet. A lot of the songs before it are like clocking it over 5 minutes, and you just have this one that comes in that I think if I was correct, I could be wrong. I'm not 100% sure, but that's one of his daughters that he's talking to.
Yes,
Um,
I'm fairly certain that he's talking to one of his daughters.
yeah. So like it just kind of had this feeling of real like palpable love. Like that's not we this is like one of the other musicians' kids, and like you want to like say something for the mic, it felt like a genuine conversation. Um, I saw one review that was like, "Oh, this is an example of like the sexualization of." I'm like, "What the fuck are you talking about? Like, how did you get that from this song?" Because I definitely did not get that.
I mean,
Um,
I think part of it is also just like you have to remember like what a big deal like pageants were at this period in time, and like you know,
yeah, maybe I like.
and like just like I
I
mean,
don't.
if you think
Yeah,
of it through like a Black Pride context, it's like
yeah,
like I mean, it's self like we are beautiful, right? Like
yeah, and that's how I looked at it. Like, I'm not looking at it like, what is this saying about beauty pageants though? Like, it's not a literal beauty pageant like comparison. It's not. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I also think to your point about yeah, because like I do think We Feel Dark Blue is probably the only one for me that comes into like this is maybe a little long, and even then there's like I think four between 3 and 5 distinct like movements within it. But like
Hmm.
Move On Up. which is like the longest song. It's like almost 9 fucking minutes.
Yeah.
I don't get bored listening to that at any given time.
Oh no. I don't get bored of that one. I think like with Darker Than Blue, it's the fact that like it goes back to that really slow kind of beginning part, and it's like I don't really think we needed to go back there, but that's why I'm doing the podcast, and I'm not as famous as Curtis Mayfield. So
yeah, but like songs
he got me there.
like songs like those last 3 songs are all pretty. They're all under 4 minutes. Like Wild and Free is barely over 3. And then Give It Up, like I said, my favorite is like 350. But yeah, like I think it just shows like as a songwriter, he can go from writing these like absurdly ornate, complex like 10-minute songs, and then he can like also like, oh, you want like a quintessential 60s like 3-minute soul song? Like I got you.
Yeah.
Like,
and it's also the fact that songwriting is a lot more than lyrics, and it's just as hard to do the music on this as it is to write lyrics. A lot of people focus on lyrics, and that's a big reason why I love instrumental stuff. Is there's a whole other world going on there, and you can really lose yourself in that. Like they give you different ideas in the lyrics themselves. So yeah, a lot of shit on here slaps.
yeah, I do think that If There's a Hell Below for me is the one that most embodies that. Because like Move On Up is just a fucking banger. Like you're not getting lost in the music, you're getting slapped with it. Like when they do the big organ, like the big like brass swells, and then you hear the 2 snares like bah, bah, and it starts to like, and the fucking the backbeat comes in, and then the fucking saxophone solo starts. Like you're not getting lost in that. You're getting like pelted with it.
Yeah, that's why Joe Biden used it for his presidential campaign.
But God, fucking hell. No, but I do feel like if Don't Worry If There's a Hell Below is like you do get much more like I've seen a lot of people call this record psychedelic soul, and I think outside of that song I don't feel that. But that song is very agree. Like psychedelic, and you do very much get lost in the kind of like the way the strings kind of like veer almost into like a screeching territory at the end of kind of the main riff they do, and the wah wah, palm muted guitar, and
yeah, it was a fun listen.
40 minutes, can't fucking go wrong with a 40-minute record. 8 songs,
yeah,
does not overstay its welcome. But yeah, I mean, I could talk for another hour about this, but I won't bore the listeners.
We'll play a snippet right here for you.
Hush not, child, and don't cry. Your folks might understand you by and by. Just move on up toward your destination, though you may find from time to time complication.
I'm going to be talking directly to Danny's mom here, and I hope you are happy that this episode was free of Eagles slander. We had nothing negative to say about the Eagles yet, but we'll see. So I know I said like that's what we're all about, but I'm gonna we're gonna withhold comments.
I mean, I like the Eagles. I don't see the problem here.
I don't know if I can bring myself to say it.
Hater.
Maybe next month I'll summon up the courage. I do actually think there was an inaccuracy with our last episode.
Oh.
I think you said that the Eagles' Greatest Hits is the best-selling album of all time. And I don't think that was true. When I looked it up, I'm pretty sure it's still Thriller.
It might have been, yeah. I mean, I'm not going to say I'm an encyclopedic knowledge of record sales.
Yeah,
it's number 4. It's number 4.
For
Okay.
what it's worth, Whitney Houston's "The Bodyguard" soundtrack has sold more than the Eagles' greatest hits.
Okay.
So
Okay. However,
just
here's what I'm gonna say. So if you look at total certified copies, Whitney Houston has 28.7 million, but they claim 45. The Eagles have 41.2 million certified and claim 44. I don't know. I feel like there's an anti-Eagles agenda. In terms of total certified copies, it's number 2 behind Thriller. Jesus, Back in Black is the second best-selling record of all time. God, we really gotta improve the
Danny,
music taste of the population. Fucking hell.
you should be glad your ass moved, because what you're saying right now, that this is the next episode is gonna be us fighting.
You're
You're just gonna hear slaps and I'm gonna pull your hair.
I'm just gonna say, I heard someone describe AC/DC as kids music, and I was like, yeah, this is for children.
Just think, like, I'm looking at the Wikipedia article. The soundtrack to Saturday Night Fever has sold more copies than Led Zeppelin 4 and Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band.
I didn't realize Jagged Little Pill
Yeah.
was that big. Like, I mean, obviously, it's Alanis
It
Morissette,
slaps, I
right?
mean,
But like, I didn't realize
yeah.
it was like a top 15 selling record of like all time. That's crazy. All right,
I mean, she deserves it.
I mean, that's true. If anyone like Guns N' like,
If anyone comes around here talking shit about Alanis Morissette, you better watch your fucking back. I don't want to hear any Alanis slander.
Not on
She
this
came out with like an
podcast.
ambient. She came out with like an ambient album that I haven't heard yet. But I'm like, damn, she made this specifically for me.
They did like a musical. That like all the songs are Jagged Little Pill, you know. And
Yeah.
My friend said they accidentally got like way too high to go see it. And there's this scene like, and it just like it's always seems like it tries to address like every social issue of the 2010s in it. And so
Yeah.
like there's a scene where kind of like there's like a sexual assault happening, and like the
My
male
God.
actor is like crawling around the stage like a wolf right before it happens, and like
Oh my god.
they were like laughing because they were so fucking stoned. Oh.
I mean, even if I wasn't, I would be laughing. Maybe
I-
out of like just pure uncomfort.
yeah. Anyway,
Like, I'm watching this. We're gonna talk about our next episode.
yeah, it's gonna be a special one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
special. What? I don't know what episode is that. Like episode
5.
6, 5.
This is 4, I
Damn.
believe. Yeah.
I don't know how to count. I was an English major, so
Yeah, I was gonna say this is why we're talking about music. You know, we talked all about polyrhythms, but never mention any time signatures, because we can't fucking count.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really even know what a polyrhythm is. Don't quiz me on it.
Yeah. So the next episode we're doing EPs,
Ooh, yeah.
short.
So what are you giving me?
I really racked my brain. Like I had
Uh-oh.
there's like 4 things I kept trying to decide between, but you know, I think that it's got to be Alwasta by Odyssey, PG County's very own. It's listed as an album on Spotify, but if you go to his Bandcamp and his SoundCloud, it is called an EP. So I'm gonna roll with it.
We'll let the people decide if it's an actual EP. So I don't know. We'll let your fate be decided. I'm doing a throwback. I'm taking us back to episode 1 when we did Shoegaze, and I'm gonna give you "You Made Me Realize" by My Bloody Valentine.
Oh wow!
It's an EP. It's awesome. Everyone always talks about Loveless, and you know we could do Loveless, but this EP is like 17 minutes. It's very digestible, and it's MBV like being a bit more harsh. And I'm really into that. So curious to hear your thoughts on all of that.
Yeah, it fucking sucks. I just listened to it. 0 out of 10. No,
Damn.
I was gonna say if it were still like culturally relevant to make a hipster joke, I would make a hipster joke about you giving me this one instead of Loveless. But you know, hipsters aren't real anymore.
You know, Loveless is an EP because I turned that shit off 15 minutes in. so there we go. That's our next episode. So y'all better be ready. You better listen too. Like we tell you what we're doing, and I don't want to hear people saying, "Oh, well, I haven't heard the album." We told you what we're gonna do, so I don't know what your excuse is.
It's 17 minutes. Like that's like I know the two listeners we have.
I've
who
taken
aren't my
poops
mom.
longer than that. I've taken poops longer than that.
I think you should go to a doc. Well, I think you should go to a doctor.
Listen, American healthcare these days.
You know, I don't want
Forget
to put anyone on blast, but I do have an old roommate who used to take like 45 plus minute shits, and it was unbearable. Like that boy needed to go to a doctor. So if you know who you are, if you're listening to this and haven't gone to a fucking doctor, like,
please go.
either you were jerking off the whole time and embarrassed about it, or there's something going on there.
There's the bit where, you let it all happen, and then, now I'm chilling. Now I'm relaxing. I'm chilling in the bathroom for a little bit. But we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Rest in peace, Ivana Trump.